Welcome back to the Patient First Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Laskin, where I am looking to help increase the influence of today's engaged dentists and dental professionals. Thanks for being here. It's early on in the year 2022, and frankly, I'm just jazzed. I'm so excited. The new year is one of my favorite times of year, even though in Minnesota, it is freezing. It is freezing, and this week in my office, no heat, 50 degrees. I got here because there's other tenants in the building, my dental practice. So my dental practice is keeping my technology companies where I am now warm, but it's been 50 degrees. So if it looks like I'm trembling, it's because I am freezing. If I just stop and pause, please send help. Just kidding. I'm fine. But it's been very cold this week in my office. Hopefully your office is a little more warm and you had a phenomenal holiday season and New Year and you're getting ready to get back to work. And I was thinking about sort of what's gone on in my life over the last year. And it feels like 10, doesn't it? Every year it seems like the last few years has felt like 10. But I was thinking about success and the problems that success can bring. And I think it's very pertinent for us to talk about this in relation to how we take care of patients today. Talk a lot about on this podcast how I think strongly that this is the best time to be a dentist and the worst time to be a dentist. What do I mean by that? It's the best time to be a dentist if you are looking to make the small, seemingly insignificant changes to adjust your practice in line with the patient's expectations. And it is the worst time to be a dentist if you don't. Because just like there's a great reshuffling of employees in dentistry that we've talked about, there's a great reshuffling of patients. And their expectations have fundamentally changed. And those of us that make the small changes to address the patient's expectations, this has been true for years. However, it's absolutely crucial right now. And in that context, I was thinking about success. And I believe that success is problematic. It really brings across two different problems. The minority of people, and I think the very small minority of which I am pathologically one, is success breeds people to want to level up in some people. So some people have trouble, myself included, not chasing the next thing. So as soon as they hit a milestone, they hit success, they look for something bigger, which is its own issue and problem and pathology that we're not going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about is the majority of people, the majority of dentists, I believe, that leads them to not make the changes, the small changes that is required to really not just compete, but to survive in today's marketplace. Basically, what success does to most people is success breeds complacency. And this makes all the sense in the world. If you think about it evolutionarily, if you think about it logically, the average person, including dentists, is going to, once they hit success, they have something to lose. And the fear of loss is more powerful than the opportunity of gaining something new for the vast majority of us. So when we have something to lose, when we have success, we act out of fear of that loss, which means we act with complacency. And the average dentist today earns about twice what their family of origin did. So the average dentist grew up in a household that made about $70,000 to $80,000, and the average dentist is probably making around $150,000 a year. So that means that they're making about twice what the family of origin is, and it feels like you won the lottery. The problem is dentists don't typically have their own 401k, or they have to fund that out of their income. They have to pay for other people's income, and our wages, our profitability, as I've talked about several times recently on this podcast, I think are under siege. I think that income is under siege. And I think, again, this is the best time to be a dentist. It's the worst time to be a complacent dentist, right? So if you're thinking about the sale of your practice as being like your retirement plan, I think that's stinking thinking. I think right now is a very good time to sell. I think practice values are high, but everything's high right now and inflation is going crazy. But there's certainly going to be another side to that story. Who knows when? But I think that a lot of dentists believe that the value of their practice is their retirement. And if you've done the numbers, and I would recommend you do, or sign up for abundance, you can hit a button and you can see the value of your practice, you might be shocked. So this, success breeding complacency is one thing, but what really breeds, in addition to success that breeds complacency in most dental practices, is we are just too busy, right? Most dentists don't take enough time off to restore themselves, let alone time to run their practices, to really take that 1,000-foot view and look at your practice and make the small changes, to even know what those small changes are, right? There's I think a key aspect of practicing dentistry is to take a pause regularly, at least quarterly, and inventory your practice and see what small changes you can make to help position yourself better. And I think that most of us don't do it because success breeds complacency and most of us feel successful and we're too busy. It's hard to do this. I don't mean to downplay the difficulty, if you're successful, to not be complacent, or if you're busy, to pause. Those are both incredibly hard things to do. So I don't mean to say that these are simple concepts. It still means that they're very difficult to act on. So the fact that you have success looking for an opportunity that's going to be difficult to chase is not inconsequential. Neither is the fact that if you're very busy, taking the time to pause is a challenge. This is challenging. It's very difficult. So I think we do need to pause, step back, and make the small adjustments necessary so that our practices and ourselves personally can reach our peak performance. So we don't just end up working harder and harder and harder and getting less and less and less, which is what I think will happen for those that are complacent in today's marketplace. It'll be like death by 1,000 cuts, where you'll look back in 5 years going, what happened over the last 5 years? What happened was the world fundamentally changed right around now so that complacent dental practices will be basically withering. And I think it's important. And so I wanted to bring a story of hope, or maybe a story of inspiration for the dentists that are listening today going, what are you talking about? Like, what are the things that I should be focused on? And it's one of my favorite stories about John Wooden. So John Wooden won 10 national titles at UCLA from 1964 to 1975. He was the first person to be inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame, both as a player and a coach. And what's really cool about John Wooden is that from my perspective, because I don't really know much about basketball, but I do know that he was a champion coach and player. And one of the things that made him a champion, I believe, is that he focused on the fundamentals, on making the small adjustments, on looking for small improvements that make a difference. Every single year, what he did, he started off not by having the defense practice or three-pointers or layups. That was too advanced. So he started every year with one thing, and that was having the players practice lacing up their shoes, tying their shoes. That's a fundamental, right? Getting everybody to be able to tie their shoes correctly, he felt was an important way to start every single year, right? That's the opposite of complacency in my mind. He was consistent. He focused on the fundamentals, and he didn't think, oh, well, we got that because we practiced it last year. Every year, he went back to the very, very beginning and looked at it and saw, how can we improve how we tie our shoes? And the reason why was he didn't want blisters. He felt that those blisters would affect the players in the game. What can we bring from that into our practices? I would argue that the opposite is complacency, is this type of consistency of looking at the fundamentals and practicing the fundamentals in your practice. What are we doing when it comes to our core values and our core purpose? Why are we here? Who are we as people? Have you regurgitated that to everybody on your team over and over and over again till you want to choke on the words, because it's just it's ingrained in who we are and what we do. And how often do you revisit those? Is this truly who we are as people on this team? Is this really what we're about? About your facility? Have you taken a tour and looked at every aspect of your facility, or updated systems? Instead of setting a system from 10 years ago and just expecting it to go on for a decade, do you revisit it all the time, every time? And training, obviously, that's a big piece. People don't just need to be trained, they need to be retrained. And so I think with this new year, I'd like to have you take a step back and think about the shoelaces in your practice. What can you do that's fundamental to your patient's experience, to your delivery of care, to how your office runs, from a big picture all the way down, out from your core values, which are foundational, all the way down to how you set up your rooms, how many cotton rolls you're placing out for that procedure, and get detail oriented, because blisters lose games, right? Our profits in dentistry, as I talked about on a very recent podcast, are being crushed. And I think it's important for us to look at our practices from a foundational aspect. And if you need help, we have our upgrade day coming up. It's January 21st. Of course, it's a virtual event, so you don't have to be there January 21st. That's just when the courses are going to be available. You can watch them whenever you want to, at your own time. We have some phenomenal speakers. The faculty have done a great job putting together some really great courses, I believe. We've had over 3,000 dentists go through our first 2 upgrade days, and now we've got upgrade day 3 coming up on January 21st. Just go to upgradeday.com to sign up, and you'll get free access to my course, which is 3 steps to massively increase your production, where I will actually go through some foundational aspects like we're talking about today, and present to you some ideas of some shoelace type concepts that you can work on in your practice, so that you can win the game and just kind of move past the complacency. Take a pause on the busyness and take a look at your practice, so we can make those small adjustments that I think are required today to help meet patients' needs, meet the needs of our team members, and then, of course, so you can live the lifestyle that you want to and increase your influence as an engaged dentist. So thank you very much for joining me again on the Patient First podcast. I look forward to talking with you next week.